Good afternoon. Welcome to Life Unrehearsed. I'm Matt Delvecchio, specializing in home care, downsizing in the senior living industry. Thank you for tuning in. Coming up on the first half of the show, we're going to hear from CTV Montreal news reporter Christine Long, who will be bringing us behind the scenes on what it takes to bring a news report on air. And it's Earth Day tomorrow. I'll be talking to Executive Director of Earth Day Canada. And on the second half of the show, the fascinating Emergency Medicine Simulation Center at the Jewish General Hospital. And I'll wrap up the show with the dynamic mother-son duo. Zach Reisman is on the autism spectrum who designs and produces unique greeting cards. That should be quite special. All right, I've been looking forward to our next guest for a while. Many of you will know her face and certainly her voice. I'm talking about CTV Montreal news reporter Christine Long. Christine, welcome to Life Unrehearsed.
I hope he's talking about me. Thank you. Thank you, Matt. It's nice to be asked, and it certainly is unrehearsed in the newsroom, I got to tell you.
Oh, for sure. I can't wait to hear about a day in the life of Christine Long. First of all, thank you for joining me here in studio.
Pleasure.
I really appreciate it. Now, for our listeners, tell us maybe a little bit about your life growing up. How was it?
I grew up in Dorval, which was fantastic, and then we moved into town. I went to Royal West, and I always had the radio on. My family said they knew what room I was in because the radio was on or the TV was on. So I knew I had to work in current events. And then I worked in photography for a couple of years in London, England, and I was in a dark room without other human beings. And Matt, I figured, okay, I have to work in current events and I have to work with human beings. So that led me to media. And after Royal West, I went to Vanier, and then I started McGill. And one day I'm at the McGill radio station, CKUT, and the phone rings. It's the request line. It's the program director from Shome, who said, hey, Terry DeMonte told me to check you out, and so here I am calling. Can you come in for an interview? That was Terry, and Terry never told me.
Oh, you're kidding me. So it started with Terry, got your name out there. You go for the interview at Shome, and then what?
I was 17 years old, I had nothing to lose, and then I'm sitting next to like Too Tall and Chris Michaels, guys who've been in the business for 17 years, and the only other woman on staff was Peppermint Patty and myself. And so I had nothing to lose. So they said, do you want to do the midnight shift? And I said, yes. Yes, I do.
So
and that's what I did.
You started at the midnight shift at Shome. And, well, I've heard a lot of stories about the midnight shift at Shome. You must have a few. But you're alone in the studio. So how is that? Explain the atmosphere.
Oh, well, like in your studios here, I'm alone in my studio, but there's somebody down the hall alone in their studio at CKGM or 980 Hits. And you know those rumors about Shome having a ghost? It's true. And I would say there was 2 ghosts myself. And it was a great experience. It was a great learning ground. I had to queue up records. We had vinyl, Matt. Mm-hmm. We had vinyl and carts, the old carts. So it was basically, midnight till 6 a.m. And then at 5 a.m., I'd start calling Terry DeMonte. Hi, Ter. Wakey, wakey. Morning. Hi, Ter. Okay. Give me a couple more minutes. Call him again. And he'd get in 6 a.m. And the numbers were huge. Him and Peppermint Patty and Shome. And the days where you weren't streaming, everybody was tuned in. And it was so exciting. And then I worked my way up to weekends and afternoons. And after 4 years, I finished McGill. And then I said, I'm going to move to Japan. And I worked,
really?
Yeah, I worked in radio in Tokyo for 2 years. And then I came back to Shome for another couple of years before TV.
Listening to Life Unrehearsed, Matt Delvecchio here. I'm talking to CTV Montreal news reporter and past Shome DJ, Christine Long. So off to Japan you go. You come back after a couple of years. And so what's next after that?
Shome said, you can come on back. And I said, yes, please, because it was great fun. And then I heard they needed a traffic reporter at CFCF 12. Mm-hmm. Pulse News needed a traffic reporter. I'm like, I can do that. And that, Matt, and for your intern, Demetra, always if somebody says, can you do this? Say yes. And then YouTube it and figure it out. No. So
and in the day, there's no YouTube, right? I mean, you're winging it.
Push forward. Well, you know what you do? I would pay attention. I'd watch our newscast, other people's newscasts, and try to absorb. I would record the credits, who does what's their name, and then figure out all the jobs to try and piece together this Jenga puzzle that is the 6 o'clock news, so that when I walked into the interview, I had some semblance of how this is working. So I got hired to do some traffic reports, and then I did weather. I was a weather girl for 3 months, Matt. It was great. But no, it wasn't, because people complain when their golf game is postponed. It was my fault.
It's all your fault for sure. You're the one to blame for the rain.
But then what happened was Jamie Orchard had left CFCF for Global. Global was a new station, and so the entertainment beat at CFCF was available, and they hired somebody, a fantastic talent, but who was more comfortable with a pre-tape. And I had been doing live radio for 8 years. So I was like, live? I can do live. And that's what I did. They said, come on in and give it a go. So I did. And live TV is a lot like live radio, but you wear more makeup.
And live TV then. So we're talking how many years ago about, Christine, when you
A
started
little
doing
over
the
20.
20? We'll go with that number.
Thank you.
Yeah, there we go. So, one of the things, and you've seen over the past 20 years from a technology standpoint, a lot different from when you started live TV. I guess cameramen and editing was all there and so on, to where it's developed today. And you've seen it all in these 20 years. And good on you. You've had to evolve and adapt, and not a lot of reporters were able to do that, and so you toughed it out. And so maybe if you could describe to us, Christine, a day in the life, how does it work? You wake up in the morning, do you already know your schedule, or is it fresh, you find out that day? And then how do you go about producing? You're doing a lot of the editing, I hear, on your own, and then sometimes you're live. So explain a day in your life.
It's busy. I'm never bored. And to your point, I used to have a cameraman and an editor and somebody driving. Now I do everything. My phone rings at 9:30 in the morning. Okay, Chris, you're going to Park Extension. You're going to talk to people there. And then, so before I leave, I make a couple of calls. Hey, can you meet me there? Can I interview you? Can I set up in front of your house, and will you come out and talk to me on the TV camera? And, people feel, if it's something they feel important about, they will. And or if they say, no, I don't want to talk to you, I respect that as well. So I'll record on the camera, and then I put it into a laptop, and I do all the editing on a laptop. And that gives us the ability to edit in the field. So if something happens in Chateauguay or Mercier or Saint-Chrysostome, I can be there. I can interview on site if there's a power outage and feed it back from my vehicle. And the sad part is I work alone, and I used to work in a team. So I still really like people, and I like to talk to them. And sometimes I'm talking to them when they're going through a hard time. And sometimes I'm talking to them when they're going through a good time. So it varies every day. It's a lot. And then I'll take the audio from the video package that I've created. I'll take the audio and submit something to CJD so that they have, clips from the fields of whatever's happening on the ground out there. So, and then they'll say, hey, Chris, can you write up your web copy before you go home? Okay.
Then you start all over the next day and do it all over again. Talking with Christine Long, CTV News Montreal reporter. You know that voice, and you've seen Christine. We're already right at a time. However, I'd be remiss in asking, 20 years doing this, is there a story, Christine, if you had to pick one that stood out in your mind, which one would that be?
There's so many, and a lot of them are going to schools and meeting young, amazing people. But I was just mentioning Park X, and one time, do you remember Jean Boulet said something that was erroneous, saying, oh, new Canadians don't work hard. And the assignment editor said, Chris, go to Park Extension and speak to new Canadians. And so I felt like, oh boy, this is not going to go well. I set up my tripod near the Jean Talon Metro, and stopping strangers by myself, one by one, people from around the world who had chosen to live here told me their stories about working 60-hour weeks, 80-hour weeks, and one by one they were proving that statement wrong. And it was beautiful because they were generous, despite, having the ability to feel hurt by those comments. And I'm leaving Park X, and there's a gorgeous statue on Park and Jean Talon about the new Canadians who have been coming to Park X for, 2 centuries, making this an amazing part of Montreal. And I was like, I'm so glad to hear it from the people who can really tell me the truth, what the truth is.
And, I love that story, because your job is actually to get that out there to, there may be myths, there may be assumptions, and you're dispelling that, and you're seeing it and experiencing. Obviously touched you as it did.
Yeah.
Christine, thank you so much for taking a little time.
Matt.
Just love hearing a
Can we
story.
do this again?
I'd love to. Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
That's Christine Long, CTV Montreal news reporter. You really are the best. Thanks, Christine, for doing this. Coming up on Life Unrehearsed, It's Earth Day tomorrow. I'm going to be talking to the Executive Director of Earth Day Canada, and we'll be discussing how each and every one of us can play a pivotal role in living in a more sustainable world. That's coming up after a CJD traffic news update.